Welcome, everybody. My name is Matt Pearsall. I am the Community and Social Media Manager here at the Second Step Program and Committee for Children. And I am really excited to be able to bring to you all the first in our 2022 Second Step Community Spotlight Series. Matt Pearsall. And there we go. Technical issue. Today we're going to get to meet Jacob Laurent. Jacob Laurent is a climate coordinator in Duluth Public Schools and a real social emotional learning champion, second step advocate. We appreciate the chance to get to meet him. Before we begin, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. Committee for Children's offices sit on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the first people of Seattle, Washington, the Duwamish tribe. As we honor the Duwamish people and their ancestors, it's important that we consider our place in the past, present, and future history of the Indigenous peoples of our region, as well as how we can best support them. Thank you. And now I'm really pleased to get to introduce to you Jacob Laurent. Jacob, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Awesome to be here streaming live, and hope you're all having a good day out there.
So, Jacob, just want to start this conversation off by helping people kind of get to know you a little bit more. How did you become as an SEL educator? What was the moment that you kind of saw, I am teaching social emotional learning, and it's an important part of what I'm doing?
There is an aha moment. I just want to backtrack a little bit there in regards to it's been kind of that sweet balance. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and so some of what you learn as a parent, as well as done a lot of variety of roles for education. I actually did wilderness therapy off the shores of Lake Superior. I went from there to a therapeutic boarding school in Costa Rica. And then from there to a dean of students for an elementary, so kind of that behavior responder. And I feel like all those started to shift of how I view kids, as well as how we can best serve kids, and really seeing that if that social emotional behavioral side is not addressed, is not supported, and our kids are not loved and hugged, then we really can't expect any other data to go up. And so I think the biggest aha for me, I was a dean for 5 years at a high poverty school here in Duluth. And after the first few years of just feeling like a little bit of Groundhog's Day, really, and wondering, are we actually changing these kids, or are we just addressing it in a reactive nature? And so for me, social emotional learning plus other kind of strong tier one, like what is every kid getting when they enter this building, actually saved my mental health. And so coming at it from a sense where, what do I have control over every day? And that is the environment and what we are able to put in front of those kids. That was almost my saving grace. And so just started dedicating a lot of time to that preventative nature, as well as working at that. I've worked at a high poverty school and a very wealthy, entitled boarding school, and at the end of the day, they're all kids and they all have some of those basic needs underlying. And so it changed my view of education, but as well as like human nature, that if we don't start looking at these kids holistically, just like we do when we're parents, why should it change as educators? Then we're failing them. Test scores say one part of the story, but really, and I think this helped for even our staff buy-in, like these are all people are going to be in our community, and how do we create good citizens and people that care about each other? And so for me, that was always super important. And I get test scores are a driving force, but boy, at the end of the day, I would hang my hat on that. We created this amount of just good humans that care about each other with that empathy intertwined in there. So kind of a long answer to a short question, but just wanted to give some background and how it really kind of changed how I attack this work, but also just how it's made a difference in when I go home at night, and just feeling good about the work we're doing.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you kind of frame that up as finding ways to love and hug children. I think that's a really kind of powerful way to think about it, and it doesn't need to be more complicated than that in a real basic level. So you were a dean of students, and you kind of working on this and having the going on this journey, and now you're a climate coordinator at the district level. What does that mean? What does a climate coordinator do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, when I got hired, someone put on a Facebook post like, "Wow, look at the bureaucracy of public schools. They have someone checking the temperature." And so I always go back to that. That's not what I will, if you want, I'll go check your thermostat. But really how I think of it is, if, from that kind of MTSS triangle, if half of it's academic, the other half, the mental health, the behavioral, the social emotional, um, usually falls on my plate. I'm still in the teacher category. I'm not a director by any means. So that means I have to be a little more creative and smart of how I get these larger programs and or district initiatives through. So I'm in my third year as climate coordinator for Duluth Schools. And I have to say, this is like the first month where I'm like, I think I'm actually doing my job. Um, and so I know many of you out there the last 2 years have been, I've heard the word dumpster fire, but I mean, just challenging. And so this year, uh, it's just nice to get back to looking ahead instead of the what are we doing right now, what needs to happen tomorrow, which is just not sustainable. So this year feels good for sure.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's really nice to be in that spot after the last few years. I think we'd love to learn a little bit more about your work, specifically around social emotional learning and Second Step. And I know that there's a lot going on there. I was wondering if you could share just like what's one thing you and your team are working on right now that you think is really cool, or you're really proud of the what you're doing or the effect you're having.
So this is our second year being district wide. We have 11 sites, elementary and middle school, all doing the digital program. And then we have all of our pre-K doing the kit-based. And so our second year, last year was our implementation year. And again, last year we had so many asks on teachers. And I was, just really blown away by how well it was accepted, but also the data we collected. And so I think I'm going to just kind of highlight data practices a little bit on this, not as flashy and nice, but it speaks to stakeholders. It also just shows like, are we doing this and are we doing it correctly? And so last year for implementation year, we actually set a 80% goal for completion data. And so with the digital program, you're site by site actually able to run a report and break down classroom teachers and who's doing it, how many they are through. And so 80% for completion, and we hit that number and above for elementary and secondary, which to me was a double win just with the amount of stress of last year. And so we were kind of as a team thinking, how can we increase the fidelity and the quality of the product, but also trusting our teachers. They are bona fide teachers, and so if they want to tailor this in some ways to better fit their teaching style on a lesson, like please do, right? Like how can we keep those themes consistent but also make that teacher weave their personality into it, because that's true SEL, right? If we were able to nail that all, we wouldn't need a curriculum. But we do. And so what we're doing this year is actually increasing our completion data. We're going to go up 5% to 85%. Year two, we have a lot less barriers because we don't have the scariness of new. So I think that's really attainable. And then what we wanted to do is actually incorporate the walkthrough tool that Second Step has. It's basically a one pager, 4 rankings, I believe 1 to 3. And so when we started talking to teachers about that, the amount of time it takes to partner up, have someone walk through your classroom. And so we're actually going to try to find this sweet middle. We'll see how it goes. But they're actually going to be self observations and self reports. So we actually made it Google. We're a Google district, and so we use Google Forms to make that rubric into a Google form, where teachers, um, 2 times this year, a spring and a fall, kind of bookmarks, are going to self-rank themselves. And it's not a way to say, wow, you're struggling. And we're not even looking for individual data, right? We don't need to know that, Miss Johnson in second grade is all ones. Man, she needs help. Really, what we're looking for is, are there common themes that we need to beef up professional development in? Or do they need more kind of one-on-one coaching? So I'm kind of excited to have those 2 sets of data this year, and really just see how that kind of roadmaps our kind of future journey on this. So that's where we're putting a lot of our eggs this year. But outside of that, we don't have any more asks on teachers, and so always being cognizant of that, I think really helps increase kind of one, just fidelity, and are people going to do it? If we ask too much, we risk them shutting down and not doing it. So we'll see how that data goes, but I'm excited to have that embedded this year.
That's really cool. And I appreciate how you were kind of working with teachers to find a way to use the tool that works for them. And it seems neat. I mean, I think kind of making it a self-evaluation, it's giving teachers a chance to reflect a little bit on it in a way that's not I mean, that's accepting and I was about to say not stressful, but
Yeah.
Whatever the positive framing of not stressful is. So what was so as you were kind of reaching out, did you reach out, like last spring? Was this when you started putting this plan into place?
In regards to the self-observation.
Yeah.
So, and this will kind of go into further talk, but we have our site champions, and so that crew is very much so the governing body, democracy, um, and really, if I have a lot of kind of program specific questions, I'm at a bird's eye view, and so I really lean heavily on that team. Um, and that was brought up kind of organically through the team, and started trying to think about how can we make this teacher friendly as possible. And so right now, that self assessment, you could be an extremely slow reader, you're still at 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're asking 10 minutes for the entire year on that aspect. So just trying to find that sweet balance between good data and not taking more of precious teacher time.
Yeah, absolutely. I just a little bit of a tangent. I want to know more about your building champions. What are your building champions, and how are you working with them?
Yeah, so we love them. They don't like the name though. They don't like the name. So I get flack from that, but it's too late now. We can't change it. But that was actually probably our greatest reason for success. And so we kind of have actually a wide gamut of different staff making that up. We have teachers, we have counselors, we have social workers, we have a dean for one of them. And so really having to get creative with that, because not all of our schools have great supports, and I'm guessing other schools like that are out there like that. And so we have one per site, and really they are the bedrock for that group. They have constant communication with me. I try to funnel all information through them. Uh, if you're in a school site, you need principals backing, but how can we take everything else off their plate? Because I think there's so much competition right now, especially post COVID. There's so much money around, and right now principals' heads are spinning. And so I think that was one of the best things we did, using these site champions to do everything up to um, end of the day compliance. And so that's where we get our principals involved. But outside of that, principals, we just say, hey, can you just plug this now and then? Otherwise, people want to hear that. But outside of that, these site champions are doing everything. They're even doing our data polls per site and reporting it to us. And so they're the problem solvers. I have one in our middle school who had a reluctant teacher, and she's so cheery. She's like, how about I come in there and co-teach that with you? And model, right? Like, I just think we have a really good platform for getting the people on the fence in, And you're always going to have those one or two sticks in the mud. And, I think being this year 2, do we still want to work on them? Yeah, but I would much rather put all of our energy into that 80-90% that are doing this, and how can we make their work better. So again, could not do this at all without site champions. um, and we also were able to get creative and offer them a small stipend. And so I'm a believer in that, because for so long educators have done work for free. And um, I always kid, it's like, a one night stay 100 miles away from here, so it's nothing like you're not flying to Florida on it. But I think it's more the acknowledgement, and the amount of work and buy-in that they provide is so well worth it. As well as we have almost no turnover on year 2, and the only
That's a
reason
great
we have
sign.
turnover, yeah, the only reason we have is people switch positions
Mhm.
overall. So to me, when I asked them all, no pressure last year, and they all were like, "I'm in." To me, that means they're feeling supported, and that's where this link between myself and Second Step, we work with Zach and Jenny. Absolutely wonderful. So if I don't know the question, I get a direct line to Second
Mhm.
Step, and then I know I'm given the right answer, and we're not kind of losing that buy-in by having confusion.
Mhm.
Site champions are I'd say our biggest reason for being where we are today. Um, the only things I'd add with that is, if you are an implementation year, or you're thinking of next year maybe doing that, that first 6 months is hot and heavy. And how can we take down every little barrier possible? I think if we start saying no, then they're going to say, well, then I'm not doing it. So
Mhm.
um, I will say, for me, I didn't predict a lot of those little things. And so I am glad how we responded as a group, um, where we really tried to address everything.
Mhm.
Um, and now that we have a little bit more footprint, we can have stronger boundaries. But I didn't want anyone to say, I can't do this because of this. And so, ton of work that first 3 to 6 months, I would say. Um, and then just one last area that I think is super crucial is share the data, and I'm a believer in this for all things: suspension, academics, all this data is public knowledge, and it should be shared that way. And um, if we aren't sharing that and showing successes and or areas we're weak, um, we aren't going to be fully transparent. And so, full believer in that. And one example, we had an elementary that was in the kind of 60% range for completion data. Share it with the staff. How do you feel about this? We saw a dramatic increase just by doing that. There's no one saying, hey, you're supposed to do this, right? So thinking of creative ways. So I'll keep going back to the data, share it with leadership teams, as well as our principals and our school sites, being fully transparent, whether it's good or bad.
Mhm.
And I think those three things are really why we are here today. And so far, year 2 has been an extremely smooth start. So I kind of think you get through that first year and life starts to get better.
Mhm.
So just happy where we are, and happy with the people that we have working close to it, because I call them believers. They're believing that this is making a difference for our kids, and that's what you got to have, that authentic realness.
That's great. I mean, I think I am really impressed hearing kind of your story and where you've gone over the last year and a half, 2 years. I think it's really impressive what you've done, and I appreciate you taking a moment to share it with us, because I think it's certainly inspiring for me, and for a lot of other folks as well. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on today. Really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you so much for joining us today, Jacob.
Absolutely, this was a pleasure, and I'm a believer too. So easy for me to do, and just wish everyone out there the best, personally and professionally this year. Keep your heads up.
And if you've enjoyed this conversation with Jacob, we'll be having another one coming up in a few weeks. We're going to be featuring Samara Gamrat from Berwyn South School District. Would really encourage you to check out her story and hear about the work she's doing. We're going to be doing more of these throughout the school year. So stay tuned for more spotlights. We're really excited to be able to highlight educators who are doing great work with Second Step and social emotional learning. And lastly, for those of you who are watching in our communities, you're already aware of this. But for those of you who are watching on Twitter or on Facebook page or on YouTube, I'll let you know that this spotlight and events like this are brought to you by the Second Step Educator community, which is a community of almost 10,000 educators who are using Second Step program, who are coming together to support each other, learn from each other, support us, and help us at Second Step create better, more responsive programs. And I encourage you all to come out and join the group. We would really appreciate having your voice added to our online community of practice. So until then, thank you all very much for attending, and I will see you in the communities or in the next live stream.